To another episode of First Fridays with the FBI. This month, we're featuring 50 years of women in the FBI. We have Special Agent Monica Abreu from the El Paso field office, Mary Panovich from the Las Vegas field office, and Suzanne Allen from the Phoenix field office. Welcome. So we're excited for everyone to get to know some of the women in the FBI, and this is celebrating 50 years. It's a feat that I'm sure way back in the day no one thought would ever happen, but here we are with three wonderful FBI agents, and we're going to get to know them today, and hopefully they can encourage you to possibly consider a career in the FBI or just to find out more about women in the FBI. So we're going to get started with Miss Suzanne Allen, Special Agent Suzanne Allen. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Monica. I'm well. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I really am excited to participate.
Well, we appreciate it. So, if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. My name is Suzanne Allen. I'm a special agent here in the FBI's Phoenix division. I came on about 10 years ago. So I just recently celebrated my 10-year anniversary as an agent with the FBI, which is pretty amazing. I'm so thankful that I've accomplished so much this far. I started off on a complex financial crime squad. I'm a CPA in my prior life, so I was really excited and thrilled to work securities fraud and investment fraud. That was really why I wanted to join the FBI in the first place. And then recently, I made a change over to the private sector coordinator position. So now a lot of what I do is communicate with companies, private sector companies here in our area of responsibility to communicate different threats, make sure that they have information about what's going on here and be in communication with them in case they, encounter or have some sort of cyber incident or some sort of threat that they may need to have the FBI's help with.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. And Mary, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Good morning, Monica. Again, thank you for having me as well. I really appreciate it. My name is Mary Panovich. I have been with the FBI for 18 years. I started as a support employee in the Chicago division, where I was a clerk, a squad secretary, and then an intelligence analyst. And in 2009, I became a special agent. I worked organized crime in Chicago and then transferred out to Las Vegas, where I worked organized crime and violent crimes against children. In 2020, I was promoted to supervisory special agent back at our headquarters in Washington, D.C., and I worked national security matters. I was very fortunate to come back to Las Vegas. My family is here, my friends are all here, and I was recently promoted to supervisory special agent of our joint terrorism task force, which works national security matters. Before I joined the FBI, I worked in a funeral home, so completely different, had nothing to do with law enforcement or tactics or anything like that. It's been a great change and an awesome career.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. So as you can see, we come from all different backgrounds.
Absolutely.
That's interesting. And last but not least, Miss Monica.
Hi, I'm Monica Abreu, Special Agent here in the El Paso field office. Thank you for allowing me to be on this podcast. I have been with the Bureau now for 23 years. In my prior life, I was a high school mathematics teacher, and my first office was actually Phoenix, and I worked violent crimes there. I was lucky to be able to return home after 2 years, so I've been in El Paso since just after 9/11, and I've worked drug matters and also public corruption matters, and I've also been now the confidential human source coordinator and the training coordinator and the new agent program development coordinator. So I spend a lot of time going back to my first career, which is teaching, educating, and mentoring many of my colleagues.
Well, we appreciate you. Welcome all of you here today, and we're looking forward to you sharing a little bit more about your lives with the FBI. So, our one of the questions that we have is, what made you decide to become an agent? And we'll start with Suzanne.
I had always wanted to be an agent. I thought it was the neatest career. Obviously, there had been female agents covered in television and movies. You think of Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs, or Gillian Anderson as Dana Scully in X-Files. And so I had grown up seeing that, but also there was something about securities fraud that really spoke to me. To me, the idea that people were out there manipulating our financial markets for ill-gotten gains just didn't sit right with me. And I knew that that was something that I wanted to explore. However, at the time, the FBI had some pretty stringent conditions to apply. There were a lot of professional qualifications that you needed to have, along with physical abilities that you needed to have as well. And so as I was progressing in my career after college, I would just continue to check back and see, if the conditions and qualifications that they were requiring were still the same. And eventually I happened to, as I was going along in my career, I happened back across the FBI jobs page. And all of a sudden, when I compared where I had gone in my career, the qualifications that I had, the fact that I was a CPA, and the physical qualifications, I thought, you know what? I meet all of these requirements. These are all things that I can do. And so I was 31 at the time. So I was beginning to get a little bit up there in age, if you will. It was going to be my second career. And I thought, well, gee, I just had a child. My husband was deployed at the time, but I realized there wasn't necessarily going to be a better or more convenient time to do this. So I made the decision that I was going to apply, and I did. And after that point, I never looked back. I just kept progressing through the application process. And there were certain things that I could control, like how well I did on the physical fitness test. And then there were things that maybe I couldn't control, like the interview and things like that. So I just did my best to prepare for the things that I couldn't control and make sure that the things I could control, I knocked it out of the park.
Thank you for sharing that. And Monica?
Okay, so I was actually a friend of mine. He was considering having his girlfriend apply to be a special agent. There had been an article in the newspaper about how the FBI was in the middle of a hiring frenzy. And his girlfriend had a 4-year degree, and she was bilingual, and she had been a professional as an educator. And I thought, well, I meet all of those qualifications, and she has the perfect nails and the perfect hair and the perfect outfit. And I don't have any of that, but I'm going to go ahead and try this and see about making this career change. I was kind of in a different boat than Suzanne, in that I wasn't married and I didn't have children. I was 28 years old, so still rather young to make that career change. But same kind of thing. I went ahead and began the process, and I didn't look back. And I kept telling myself, if there's a point where I'm going to get kicked out, then that's the point where I get kicked out. Otherwise, we're going to keep going. And at one point, I found myself on a plane to Washington, D.C., and on a bus headed to Quantico.
Well, thank you. I'm amazed by some of the stories. I think this is the perfect platform for people to see that you guys are just normal, everyday people, and just how you happen to become an FBI agent. So we hope that this basically it eases the anxiety that some people may have about becoming agents. So thank you for sharing that. And Mary?
So I always wanted to be a dentist. when I grew up. And in 1988, there was a movie that came out called Feds with Rebecca De Mornay. And I saw that movie. It was about two women. It focused on two women that went through the FBI Academy. It was really empowered women, empowering women. And at the time, I thought I never realized that a woman could be an FBI agent. And at that point, I decided I did not want to be a dentist. And from second grade on, I wanted to be an FBI agent. So I went through school. I have my degree in criminal justice and psychology. I went to school full time and I worked full time at the funeral home. And I had kind of a bad day at the funeral home, and you have ups and downs for sure, but it is a very rewarding career in the funeral industry. However, I had just a bad day, and I picked up the phone book and I looked for the local FBI office in Chicago, and I called and I left my information for an application as a clerk. And about 2 years later, the hiring process can be pretty intense and long, and it tests your patience, but it also teaches you about patience. I was able to be hired on, and once I was in the FBI and I got to see some of the absolutely most amazing women that were leading cases, that were taking cases to trial, that it was just, to me, it was just so impressive. And so that's what really pushed me. Like I said, in 2009, I entered the academy. I was 28 years old. I was married at the time. I have no children, but it was the best decision I ever made. And in my office now, I have hanging up the album cover from the soundtrack of the Feds movie to remind me where it all started and where I wanted to be.
Interesting story. Oh gosh, I love that.
Mary, my friends made me watch Feds before I went to the academy because they all knew that movie too. And they said, you have to watch it before you go to the academy. So I did.
When I went to the academy, that's what I thought it was. And I asked a couple questions. I was like, are they going to wake me up in the middle of the night? Am I going to have to do this? Am I going to have to do that? But that's all I knew. I knew the Feds movie. So
that was a good
awesome.
one.
And actually last night, I made my husband watch it with me again.
Well, while we have you still here talking about that, well, tell us about your most memorable case or investigative success.
Absolutely. When I came to the Las Vegas division in 2009, wire fraud, specifically with MoneyGram and Western Union in Las Vegas, they had seen some of the largest financial losses in the country. So being on the organized crime squad, we kind of started to look at it a little bit and realized there was an Eastern European online auction fraud ring that was centered in Las Vegas that was victimizing people all over the world. And it was a long-term investigation. The organized crime cases tend to be that. And that case really changed everything for me. I learned how to build my relationships with the local police department. I built amazing relationships with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I was able to work with the Department of Justice. I had a wiretap Title III investigation. The case went all over the place, and it really built the confidence I needed in myself as a female in the FBI, but also as an investigator. And ultimately, after 3 years, we were able to indict 19 people. Again, they were people from all over the world in this online auction fraud scheme. We charged them with wire fraud and money laundering. We were able to deport some of the people that were here illegally and able to recoup the funds for many victims that had lost out on a lot of money.
Suzanne, tell us about your most memorable case or investigative success.
As I mentioned before, I specifically wanted to get into the FBI to work securities fraud and investment fraud. And it's so funny because I've had some really successful securities fraud cases, but the two cases that are most memorable to me were some smaller investment fraud cases. The first one was my very first case as an agent on the squad. And it was this group of elderly Jewish ladies who had been defrauded by a member of their faith community. And he had gotten all their money. They were going to invest in a kind of a housing flip type of situation, which was very prevalent at the time, like a lot of purchasing houses, flipping them for a profit, doing the renovations in between. And so he had taken all of their money, all of their retirement, and they had nothing. And he had left and skipped town. And just being able to identify with those victims and really give them a voice. And they knew that I was advocating for them. That to me was a really important one, because our whole family motto is to do good and make a difference. And right off the bat, I felt like that case helped me really cement the desire to do good and make a difference, because those sweet little old ladies appreciated the effort that I put into their case to hold this fraudster accountable for his actions. And then the second case was something that was sort of similar. It was another investment fraud case, but it was also a romance scam. And it started off just a couple of victims. And then the more and more people that I talked to, the more forensic accounting that we went into, the more victims we found. And that led us to do some really fun investigative techniques, like try to do an undercover, just investigative techniques that you don't normally get to employ a lot when you're working investment fraud cases. And so soon we had almost a dozen victims who had been victimized in this romance scam. And as a result, we were able to arrest this gentleman. He is now spending 15 years behind prison, and American Greed even came in and covered the case. But what was most meaningful to me, again, was giving those victims a voice. I think if I had not looked as into it, as in depth, and connected the dots and really helped them understand that I was there to advocate for them. There was no judgment. It wasn't going to be a he said, she said. I was going full force, and I think that they really understood and appreciated that. And they had confidence that, you know, coming forward was the right thing to do. And that was kind of my takeaway too, is to really make people feel comfortable coming forward, being willing to share their story, and knowing that we were looking out for them and trying to hold these fraudsters accountable for their actions.
Well, thank you. Just from the sounds of it, you know, so far, you can tell that it's your care and concern about people that makes especially victims trust you to be able to help them in solving the issue. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Monica, can you share with us about your most memorable case or investigative success?
Sure. I was working on a drug squad, and we had a rather large investigation called a Group 1. And it just involved a lot of complex investigative tools that you could employ under that umbrella of a Group 1. So essentially what happened was we were able to convince some bad guys that we had somebody who could bring their money back. So it was a drug investigation. So we were selling ourselves as brokers to return money back all the way to Mexico from within the interior of the United States. So by doing that, we actually used the bad guys' money to take more money from the bad guys. So that case involved a lot of travel, and involved having a bookkeeper to maintain all that, of which that was me. And though I was a small piece in that case, without that, the case couldn't have progressed. And I was actually able to take one of the trips where we were able to bring money back and take it from the bad guys. The cool thing about that case, like I said, we were using the bad guys' money to take more of their money, is that we didn't use one dime of government funds to fund that entire investigation. That entire investigation, with all the travel to different cities in the United States, but primarily Chicago, all of that was funded with bad guy money. There was not one penny spent of government funds. And on the average, we were taking off $2 million or more, probably every other time we would go and help get the money back to Mexico. So it was a really cool case because, you're just using the bad guys' stuff to take more of their stuff.
I like that, using the bad guys' money. I don't think, as a citizen, I don't think about that. I just now it dawns on me that obviously this all takes money, and I don't think the community or the public actually knows just how much it takes to investigate, a case. I think we just say, oh well, they work for the FBI, so that's part of the job, but we don't look at the bigger picture. With it does take money, but when you can use the bad guys' money to to solve the case, that's even better.
Yes.
So that now that I understand that. So how do you all balance your work and personal life? And we'll start with Mary.
I'll be very honest with you. I at times I struggle with that a lot. As FBI agents, we are on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have cell phones that were provided by the Bureau. And so to me, I feel like I have an obligation to answer that phone and to be ready. And especially now as a supervisor, I feel like I have people that are dependent upon me, and I need to ensure that they're safe and that they're mentally and physically well. And so I have a hard time with that. My husband is a retired law enforcement officer and by far the most supportive person I've ever had and been lucky enough to be a partner in my life. And he also gets the idea that my phone may ring in the middle of the night and I may have to get up and leave. And so I think that I look for opportunities to get away and take some leave, and then I have somebody that fills in for me while I'm gone. So it gives me a better peace of mind knowing that there's nothing that I should be doing or can be doing. I love to go to Disney World. I have 2 little chihuahuas that are absolutely my world and everything to me. And one of them, in fact, I actually rescued from the office here. Her name is Betty, and she was named after the secretaries in the 1950s and 60s. The agents often referred to the female secretaries in the office as Betty Bureaus. So they are, I am a hardcore Chihuahua mama, and just really look for opportunities to relax and unwind. But also I do realize, and I know that I do have an obligation, and I have taken an oath to stand up and represent the FBI in all capacities of my life.
But that's good that you're able to share that you're only human and you do
Right.
find
100%. That's what
right.
It comes down to.
Right. Even if it's just a little bit of time, I'm sure it's worth it.
Yes.
So, and Monica, tell us how you balance work and personal life.
Well, I made a conscious effort back in 2006. My daughter was 3 years old, and I knew we wanted another child, and there was an opportunity in the office to take on the role of the confidential human source coordinator. So I did go talk to the SAC about taking that role. It's more of a compliance position, if you will. There's certain rules and regulations that have to be followed when we're working with people that are willing to help us with our investigations. So I felt like, and I knew it was going to put me in the office, and I knew I would be sacrificing more of an investigative career and more of squad camaraderie by being in this position. But I made that sacrifice for my then daughter and my now son, and it was the best decision I could have made. I still remained engaged. I still remain engaged with all the agents because they come to me regarding questions about sources. They come to me regarding questions about training. So I still feel very engaged with them. And then I continued to stay with a reactive program by being a part of the SWAT team. And that would be the TOC, which is the Tactical Operations Center. So by staying in that position, I'm still engaging in and witnessing and learning about tactics and our SWAT team and our crisis management program. So I feel like I'm still engaged in those things, whereas I'm not as much of an investigator as I was back before 2006. My job is still important, but it gave me that work-life balance that I needed. And more importantly, I have, yes, a supportive husband, and I have my parents who live here in El Paso. And so they are my backups. And so they've made it very helpful for me to know that, hey, I can't pick up the kids. Can you grab them, and I know that they can do it. And so I've been very fortunate to have them there as my support system.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And on that note, tell us, please, what is the best career or life advice you've been given?
The best career life advice I've been given has been to not sit there and think that you can't do something, but go ahead and try. You've got to at least try. You don't know what's going to happen until you open that door and put your best foot forward.
Thank you so much. And Suzanne, I didn't want to leave you out. So please share with us about the best life advice, career and life advice you've been given. I think it froze. Oh gosh, did it freeze?
Yeah, she's frozen.
Can you guys hear me okay? I think I just might have lost it a little bit there.
Okay, now I can hear you.
You got me still?
Yes, now we have you back. I think it just went out just a little bit.
Okay, so. I kicked it. I'm sorry. The best advice that I have been given, and this is something that I think has helped me balance my work and personal life as well, is family first. Having a support system in place was critical for me to get through the FBI Academy, because I was leaving my husband and my 3-year-old daughter at home while I went to the academy. And that was a real challenge. And then when I got back from the academy, we wanted to expand our family. So I ended up having my son. And I was actually like a probationary agent, and you're on probation for the first 2 years of your career. And so I was a little not concerned, but it gave me a little bit of pause, because I knew that a lot of people weren't, becoming agents and then having kids right away. And so I think I put some pressure on myself to make sure that I was living up to my expectations for myself as a new agent, trying to establish myself as a respected agent as well. And, part of that involved me joining the part-time program so that I could stay home and spend time with my kids a little bit more when they were younger. So I took advantage of that part-time program. But at the same time, I was also on a complex financial crime squad, which affords a little more work flexibility. Now, that's not to say that I specifically remember a Mother's Day when I was doing surveillance instead of being at home celebrating being a mom. But those are some of the things that the sacrifices that you make to make sure that you're doing your part to keep your communities safe. But again, I go back to family first, because sometimes when I think about, what I'm doing, am I doing enough? Is I think about, at the end of my life, am I going to look back and say, boy, I sure regret not working more? Or am I going to look back and say, boy, I sure regret not spending more time with my family? And it's always going to be, you're always going to want to spend more time with your family. I am the only mother that my children have, and that's a really important job. And so sometimes I really do struggle to balance being an agent and a mom, but I know that I'm doing the best job that I can. I take being an agent very seriously. And so I have imparted that into my kids as well. And they understand that sometimes I just need to sit down and do a few emails, and then they've got my undivided attention. So that's kind of the advice that I've received that I try to follow, is family first.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And Mary?
I think you want to talk about advice that I was given?
Yes.
Okay. So I was fortunate enough to work with a female DEA agent who I admired tremendously when I was a support employee. And when I was starting the path down to become an agent, she had told me, never let this job define you, and always find the joy and happiness in it. And I think that's really important because you have to stay true to who you are. And you have to, yes, you have an obligation to be an agent and you are going to do the best job you absolutely can, but don't lose yourself in it. And when you don't lose yourself in it, it's a much easier, a much happier job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for that. So I'm going to kind of reverse it and ask, what is the best career or life advice that you have shared with others or given others advice on? And Monica, can you share that with us?
Yes, when I speak primarily with female special agents who are moms, because I know the struggle. You are wondering if you're doing a good enough job as an agent when you're at home, and you're wondering if you're doing a good enough job as a mom when you're at work. So I usually tell most female agents, hey, you are doing the best that you can. Know that you're doing the best that you can, and just move on from there. I also like to tell people that you drive your own career. Never feel bullied to take a supervisory position, or never feel like you're being forced to do something. You drive your career. You want to be a supervisor, you go for it and you do it. You want to move up the ranks of the FBI, go for it, do it. But you drive your career. Don't let anybody else try to drive your career.
Thank you. And Mary?
I actually, Monica, agree so much with you on that one. When I was at headquarters, I think I kind of had an epiphany that we have challenging days in the Bureau, but we don't have bad days, because a bad day is when you don't get to go home at night. A challenging day can push you to make you a better agent, a better person, and you learn things from that. So always keep in mind that we have no bad days, but we do have challenging days.
Okay, great. And Suzanne?
I love all of these. You guys can be my mentors, please. It's really fantastic advice. Give yourself some grace. You know, again, we all struggle with work-life balance. And I think we just have to be forgiving and give ourselves grace at the end of the day, because we all are here. We came for different reasons, but we're all motivated by the same reason. We want to protect and uphold the Constitution. We want to protect our communities. And sometimes that seems like almost an overwhelming job, but we're all in it together. And so that gives me a lot of comfort, knowing that we're all on the same team, we're all fighting the same fight, and we're all doing it together. And so when we have challenges or things that we need to overcome, we just have to give ourselves some grace and know that we can overcome those obstacles.
Well, thank you. And it looks like you all have become each other's mentors now. So tell us, what does it mean, especially as a woman, what does it mean to make room at the table, and why does it matter? Mary?
I think that sitting at the table and making room for yourself at the table as a female in a notoriously male-dominated career field is so important. Not only for yourself, like Monica said, to do what you want and to be your advocate and push for the things and work hard for the things that you want, but it's also for the women that are beside us and the women that are behind us. The women that are in front of us have made that space for us at the table, and we need to continue to do the same thing for the women, again, beside us and the generations to come.
Thank you. And Monica?
So 50 years ago, we were afforded and we were made room for. So we owe it, just like Mary said, to those behind us to continue to make room at the table. And making room at the table means to me to continue with diversity and inclusion in the special agent position. Every single person that we leave out of that position, or somebody that may be underrepresented, we're leaving out a whole spectrum of the way a person thinks, of their views and what they can bring to that table. So it's important for us to, since we were afforded the chance to be at that table, we need to make sure that we're affording others that chance as well, because we just don't know what we're missing by not allowing that diversity and inclusion to come to the table.
No, I can understand that. Thank you. And Suzanne?
I agree with what Mary said as well. Making room for the people beside you and behind you. I think that that is so important. I think it's important to speak up and not be afraid to share your thoughts and opinions on it. As the private sector coordinator, I have been at the table with a lot of men, and I am the representative of the FBI, and I'm sitting down with CEOs and CIOs and CFOs and CISOs and chief legal officers, and I'm having these conversations. And I think it's important that the FBI has placed their trust in me in this position because I am the representation of the FBI here, and I am having these important conversations with other people in the private sector. So they're going home, they're talking to their wives, daughters, friends about this female special agent that they saw, that they had a great conversation with, and it can just lead to so many more opportunities down the road. And I also work to mentor women within our office. If there's an opportunity for me to go out on an engagement and bring a female with me, whether that's an agent, a forensic accountant, an intelligence analyst, I want to do that because I want them to experience the same successes and to have that same, share that same representativeness of the FBI to these private sector companies. And then there's one other thing I want to share really fast. One time I was having a meeting, and this was on a particular case, and I remember sitting there with the male prosecutor, the two male defense attorneys, and then the male defendant. And I thought, this is something that this is a position I never thought I would be in. And the gravity of it just hit me because there I was, the agent investigating this crime, and I was sitting at a table of just all men making my case. And so, when situations like that happen, I really try to remember, like, I am representing all women here at this table. So I try to remember that and take that with me.
Oh gosh, that was awesome. I understand that. Well, while you're here, what makes you proud to be, and I think you just shared part of that, what makes you proud to be a part of America's most elite law enforcement agency, the FBI?
I always wanted to do it. And when I was going through the process, there were many times where I thought, oh boy, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know if I'm the type of person they want. And I made it. And I'm so thrilled to join this organization because like I mentioned before, everyone had their different motivations for joining the FBI, but we are all united in our mission. And that's what's so amazing. And that's why I'm so happy to be a part of this organization, because everyone here is working to protect our communities, to protect our country, and from a variety of different threats. But we're all working together, and we are all motivated out of that sense of wanting to do good and make a difference. And so that's why I really am thrilled to be a part of the FBI. I know that when I go out into my community, I'm representing the FBI, and I do my best to always leave a positive image and to always try to, encourage more people. We need to be representative of our communities so the more people we can get in, the more different perspectives we have, the more successful we are all going to be together.
Oh, thank you. And Monica, can you share that with us too? What makes you proud to be a part of the FBI?
It's really hard to say. What makes me proud is I was just speaking to our recruiter about this, and for every agent that makes it through, there were 10,000 people that applied for this position. So it makes me proud, and it should make all of us ladies proud that we got through that process, and 10,000 others did not. So you understand the importance of the job just by that simple selection process. I'm proud to be in a career of service. My first career was of service by being an educator, and I felt that this kind of was a natural progression. Some people don't see it that way. You were a high school math teacher, and now you're in law enforcement, but it's still a career of service. And I think that's what makes me proudest, is that I am here to serve my community and to continue that legacy for myself. I started in service. I will finish in service to the public and to my country. And that's what makes me proud.
I like that. I started in service and I will finish in service. I really like that. And Mary?
I agree with what the other ladies have said, and just being a part of the organization is really just awesome. Having the people that I work besides and to be a part of their team, and also now to be a leader in this organization, I do not take that lightly. I think that we all have bad days at times, and sometimes we forget, or we have like the everyday rigmarole of life happens, and we forget, like Monica said, like 10,000 people want to be in the shoes that we are in right now. And I remember one time, I actually carry this picture. I don't know who the little boy is, which sounds kind of weird, but I promise it's not. He had his face painted and it had FBI on it. And that to me was everything. Like, you have people in the community, like Suzanne said, that look up to you, that we have a obligation to keep this community and this country safe. And it's really important to always remember where we came from and where we are. And just the overall, like, yes, we have bad days, but to be a part of the FBI and to be a part of the good in this country means everything to me.
Thank you for that. And I think one of the reasons why we're doing this First Fridays with the FBI is because of what I can see that other people are that makes me proud to do this, that I've seen the FBI agents, especially here in El Paso, happy and proud to be a part of the FBI too. So that makes me trust a little bit more. And my story is a whole different one. We'll share that later. But I'm not an agent. I just support you guys, and I really appreciate everything that you all are doing. So, but before we go, I'd like for each of you to kind of finish this sentence. My life as a woman is, and we're going to start with Monica.
My life as a woman is full and challenging.
And Suzanne.
I was going to say my life as a woman is busy but fulfilling.
And Mary.
My life as a woman is non-traditional and unique.
Thank you all so much for sharing that. And another question before we go, because we know people travel all over the world. As a military family member, we travel different places and we know people in different locations. So we want to be able to tell them about different spots or places that they can possibly visit where you are. So should a person visit if they visited your city? What's the one place that no one can leave town without trying out or seeing? Mary?
I'm going to go the non-traditional route because everybody thinks Vegas and they think the Strip and they think the casinos and the resorts, but just a little bit off the beaten path is an area called the Arts District, and that's in downtown Las Vegas. It's where a lot of locals go. Amazing food and stores and different things to do. There's some really neat old motels from the early 40s and 50s that have been converted into small shops and really cool areas. But also the Mob Museum is something that we have here in town that is unique to this city. It's highlights obviously the mob's influence in Las Vegas, but also highlights the law enforcement aspect of it and how we worked to combat organized crime. And that it features the FBI, it features the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, as well as our other supporting agencies. It's very cool.
Oh, thank you. And Suzanne?
We have a lot of variety here in Arizona. It snows up in the high country, which a lot of people don't think. They think that Arizona is just entirely desert. So it's snow. You can drive 2 hours and be skiing, or you can drive 2 hours and be in the desert. There's so many different things to do. We've got the Cardinal Stadium. We have Wupatki ruins. We have Sunset Crater. We have such a wide variety of elevations. We have Lake Pleasant, where you can go boating. We have Tempe Town Lake, where you can go rowing down by ASU. We have Scottsdale, which has a lot of old Western shops and different things. So there is so much variety that when you come to Phoenix, people still think it's the wild, wild West, but it is absolutely not. We're growing exponentially, continuing to grow still.
Well, thank you. And Monica, here in our wonderful city, I may have missed something, so share with us what that I probably even need to visit if I haven't.
I'm sure that you've been there, Monica, and to me, it's Scenic Drive at night.
Oh, yes.
It's the very last tip of the Rocky Mountains, and you get a beautiful scenic view of all the lights of town. You get to see where Juarez and Mexico are in proximity to El Paso, which is a stone's throw away, and you just get to it's just a beautiful view from up on Scenic Drive, and the drive is fun because it's all turning and swerving, but you get up to the top there and it kind of takes your breath away just to see all the lights and the beauty of the desert.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for taking the time with me today to share with others about the 50 years of women in the FBI and how they too, if they're interested, can try out for this elite agency. And if you have anything else that you would like to share, or if you have any words for women who may be on the fence about considering it, please take this time to do so.
I would say don't hold yourself back from what you might be afraid of, because you never know what can be in front of you.
I agree. There's this great quote by Carrie Fisher, and I'm going to share it with you because I think that I wasn't able to articulate it until I read her quote, but it says, "Stay afraid, but do it anyway. What's important is the action. You don't have to wait to be confident. Just do it, and eventually the confidence will follow." And I have actually used that a lot in my career, both personally and professionally. Like, it might seem scary, but you just have to do it. The worst that can happen is that you don't succeed, but you're no worse off than you already are if you don't try at all. So always continue to try. Always just do it and see what happens. You might be surprised.
Monica?
I would say it goes back to the advice I was given. Open that door and put your best foot forward. That's all you can do.
Well, again, I appreciate you all so much, and thank you for being an inspiration to so many women and young ladies who may want to consider the FBI as a career. And thank you for being a part of this 50 years of women in the FBI.
Thank you for sharing our story, Monica.
Thank you, Monica.
Is available on demand on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, iHeartMedia, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media at First Fridays FBI, and follow me personally at Midlife Mocha. We'll see you next month.